Well, now we're going to see how can we configure the brushes. I will go back to Sculpt mode, and here we have this tool menu. Down here, we have the symmetry option. That is something that we are going to use very constantly in the sculpting. We can also find the symmetry here. If we click on the X, all the things I do in one of the sides are going to be mirrored in the other side. Any stroke is going to be reflected in the other side. I can activate the symmetry in X. I can activate it in the other axis as well. If I activate it in the 3 axis, we are going to mirror in X, in Z, and in Y. So we can do all these kind of things. There is another kind of symmetry that is the radial symmetry. If we increase the radial X number, we can see that radially from the X-axis we are going to repeat everything in a radial way. So all the things I do here are going to be repeated 8 times using the X-axis as the center. If I activate another axis, let's put this in 8 again, and let's increase this as well. And it is going to be mirrored in X and in Y. You can see all the things we can create. Usually this is only useful in one of the axes. If you want to create some radial pattern, like a sun, a star, or any radial pattern for an amulet or something similar, this is the way. Well, I will put this again in 1. I will activate again the X symmetry. And now we're going to see more options up here. We already saw the radius. These options are the same we have above. The radius, the strength. And down here we have this option called Auto Smooth. When we make a stroke, the stroke is going to be very rough, very contrasted. But with the Auto Smooth, the strokes are going to be a little bit smoothed. We can see we are not getting those contrasted lines like in the strokes above. It is going to put like a smooth layer above everything. In general, I have this option unchecked in 0, and I always prefer to smooth manually with the smooth brush. Now, in advanced, we have some options for auto masking. We have the first one, that is the topology. I'm going to duplicate the sphere in edit mode, and we are going to have these 2 geometries in the same object. If we make a stroke, it is going to make it over both geometries. But if we have topology activated, it is going to do it only in one of those geometries. So this way we can manipulate one of the geometries without moving the other. I will activate it again, and you can see that we are only moving that we touch at the beginning of the stroke. I will deactivate it again, and it is going to move both geometries. Well, it's the same with the face sets. If we have here a face set, and if we check the face set auto masking, I will draw here, and it is not going to leave the face set area. So this is to mask all the areas that are not in the same face set. Well, the next one is mesh boundary. I will create here a new plane to show you. I will subdivide it several times. And so, normally, if I move this, it is going to move all the edges, as you can see, all the borders of the geometry. But if we activate mesh boundary, it is going to move everything, but not the edges. We can see the borders are intact. I can move all of this, and the geometry that is open, that is non-manifold, is going to be intact. I will remove it. And the last one is face sets boundary. That is to mask. I will activate it again. That is to mask only the edge of the face set. So these areas in where I have the edge are going to be masked. So we're going to sculpt everything but the edges. Well, down here we have other option that is accumulate, and that means that if we make a stroke continuously, it is going to add more and more geometry. If we uncheck it, it is going to have a limit. I'm drawing over the same area, and it is not going to put more volume. So the ideal is to have it always activated to add all the geometry we need. Like this. Well, the next one is from faces only. I'm going again to create a square. I will subdivide it several times. I will extrude it to create some thickness. And I will deactivate it and check what I'm going to do. When we make a stroke, the bottom area is going to be also affected. So this can damage some meshes. What we are going to do in this case is activate from faces only. We are going to make a stroke, and it is going to deform only the front faces. The bottom area is going to be intact. So this is a very useful option in many cases. The ideal is to have this option unchecked, because in some angles it can damage the geometry if we are not careful. So activate it only when you consider it necessary. Well, the next thing we have here is the stroke. By default, the stroke is in a space that is basically repeating the brush shape every some distance. I will remove this geometry here. I will soften this. I will uncheck the symmetry, and well, a space is going to repeat the stroke every some distance. Here you can see some small lines. Those lines are the repetitions of the same stroke. So the less number we have, the more repetitions we are going to have. We can see that we have some accumulations. If we increase this distance, it is going to make the strokes more spaced. Let's put this around here, for example. Let's increase the strength. I will increase it a little bit more, and this is the result of the spacing in this number. This could be useful, for example, when we want to create seams or something like that, stitches. Where there are other stroke methods, let's continue with the dots. And the dots is practically the same, but it depends also from the speed of the brush. So if we make quick strokes, they are going to be separated. I will press Ctrl C to clean this. You can see the result. This is very similar, but also depends of the speed of the stroke. If we do it slow and fast. Well, drag dot is used to select the position of the stroke. Airbrush is going to put the stroke more randomly. So it is going to put like some random strokes in different areas. And the anchored mode is to drag a first stroke, and then we can decide when to release it. We are going to see it better with the textures. With the line method, we can press a first click, drag it, and drop it, and it is going to create a line. I will decrease the spacing, I will do it again, and there is the result. This is to create straight lines. And finally, we have the curve method, and with this, by pressing Ctrl, we can create like some vectors, and when we press Enter, we are going to make the stroke along all that vector. This could be useful also in some cases, but personally I don't used to use this method. I will put it again in a space, and the following thing will be the fall-off. I will change again to draw, and for the fall-off, that could be also be founded here. The fall-off is like the shape of the brush. Here we can see a shape for the icon. It is in smooth right now, so we are going to create some smooth strokes with the same shape we have in the icon. If we use, for example, a sphere, we are going to have this result with this silhouette in the icon. Sharp, to create some sharpened lines. Linear is going to be like in 90 degrees. And we can make a custom falloff. I will select here custom, and here we can define the shape of the brush. By default it is in smooth, but we can move this curve and create a new shape, and we can make this kind of strokes. I will make it something like this, for example, and that is the result. So, depending of the type of stroke we need, we are going to modify also the falloff. And well, lastly, in the brush options, we have the texture, this one here. When we click it, we are not going to see anything. We need to create a new texture. There it is. And to edit this texture, we are going here to this menu. This is not very intuitive actually, but it is always going to be here. Here we can select a brush with a texture from Blender. For example, these clouds. We can draw with the texture of that clouds. We can select different textures like moss grape or whatever we want. But the ideal is to always use some custom alphas. Here I'm going to open an alpha folder. Here I'm going to select this one, for example, and I will make a stroke. You can see now what we are creating with this. And by default, the mode is in tiled, so the brushes are going to be repeated. We can adjust it to view plane. We can adjust it to area of the surface. We can use it as an stencil that creates this dark image. With right click, we can move it, and we can make the stroke. And all the black area is going to be masked. You can see a result, and I'm going to do it with Ctrl to make the opposite operation. And well, I'm going to put more resolution here. I will create a new subdivision level, go back to the texture, and take in mind that these textures could be combined with the stroke. So the most useful combination is to use anchored instead of space, and this way we can project the texture in a more controlled way. Here I'm going to select again anchored. I will change this to view plane, and we can rotate the direction of the stroke. I will decrease the strength. I will press Ctrl again, and there is the result. So sometimes when we want to create a texture like a skin or reptile skin or something like that, these brushes are going to be very useful for that. Let's create a new one. Let's select another alpha from my folder. I will select this lizard skin, and you can see how can we create these textures. The smooth is very intense, and we can create textures like this. So when we want to add this kind of details, instead of doing it manually, we can use this method with texture images. This could be the best method, I think, with anchored and view plane in the texture. And well, these are the options for the brushes, and in the next video we're going to talk about the sculpting methods.